In this exciting episode, Paul Drake's moved past that dilemma he had earlier this season, and he's having fun. Where else can you get swimsuit shows and murder investigations all in one place? On Perry Mason, Season 3, Episode 8, The Case of the Bartered Bikini. Welcome to the Perry Pod. I'm your humble host, Jonathan Searcy. My purpose here? Pretty simple. Provide an audio companion to the greatest legal drama in television history, Perry Mason. I plan to do an episode for every episode of the television series, and as time permits, I'll get to some of those made-for-TV movies too. I'll be working through the series in the order in which the episodes were aired. Every episode, I give you a brief refresher on the plot, and then compare it with the Earl Stanley Gardner novel it was adapted from, if that's applicable. Next, I'll list some key pieces of trivia before I tackle the episode's theme. We'll feature a Perry proverb, a pearl of wisdom from the man himself, before heading to the post-case water cooler, where just like Perry, Della, and Paul, we can discuss the ins and outs of their adventures. But first, to the law library. Each episode in the law library, we investigate some legal conundrum in the episode so we can find fresh precedents for future cases. In this trip to the library, we get a peek into the exciting world of intellectual property law. Wally Dunbar, fashion executive, wants to make sure no one steals his bathing suits and undercuts his frankly exorbitant prices. Dunbar competitor Simon Attlee thinks he's in the clear when he sells Dunbar's designs on the cheap, but Perry has other legal ideas. Tell us what you know, Perry.
Mr. Mason, I know you're aware that in the United States there is absolutely no copyright or patent protection for fashion design.
In the state of California, the penalty for receiving stolen goods can be as much as 1 to 10 years in prison.
What?
Of course, your lawyers will tell you the conviction depends upon proving that the purchaser of said goods knows they are stolen at the time of purchase.
Just what are you suggesting?
But I must warn you, Mr. Attlee, that I've had private detectives working to maintain Dunbar fashions as private property.
You know, Bartered bikinis were the MP3 songs of their time. Just kidding. It turns out this case of IP theft leads directly to murder. So let's get to the plot of this episode. The case of the bartered bikini. It's happened to you before, I'm sure. You're a fashion maven wearing some complicated yet fashionable contraption on your head. You look a whole lot like the proprietress of the nightclub in the case of the hesitant hostess, and you're walking your cute little dog down Rodeo Drive, and then it happens. You see some cheap clothing store offering comparable fashions to the ones you offer at a huge discount compared to what you just purchased from chic designer Dunbar. Well, you'd be hopping mad too. Madge Wainwright is irate.
$27.50. There it was, simply shrieking at me. Every single line the same, every pleat, every button. There I stood in your precious Dunbar original that you wanted me to palm off on my customers for $200.
So is Dunbar CEO Wally Dunbar. With swimsuit season coming up, he's gonna shake things up. Exaggerated simile coming in for a landing in 3, 2, 1.
We're gonna do them over, every single one of them. In secret, you understand? Under lock and key if necessary. And when they're done, we're gonna have security around this place. It'll make Fort Knox look like a parade ground.
Let's meet our cast of characters, shall we? Rick Stassi, fashion designer and future decedent. Do I need to tell you that if you remove one S from this guy's last name, you get Stasi, which is also the name for the Nazi Ministry of State Security in Hitler's Germany? Yikes! But my, does this guy have a tongue on him, and the writers gave him all the best lines. Here's Stasi on Wally Dunbar, his boss.
I suppose our scoutmaster is down in one of the gaudy hotels, welcoming his precious buyers and editors with sarsaparilla.
Here's Stasi on model Kitty Wynn, Wally's girlfriend. Stasi and Kitty have a history.
So a local girl makes good, eh? From rags to riches, from designer to boss, in 6 easy months.
Here's Stasi on seamstress Lisa Ferrand. They also have a history.
Well, maybe you and I could have a drink together. Like we used to.
Remember your dad, dear?
Rick, you're not angry with me, are you? Just because I made a few minor changes in your design?
Oh, don't be ridiculous. Every seamstress has her little needle.
Here's Stasi on aforementioned irate fashion maven Madge Wainwright.
Madam, you really should wear a tighter girdle with that.
Rick is so busy laughing and carrying on that he doesn't have time to trash Bud Ferrand, Lisa's husband, or cast aspersions on Simon Attlee, LA's on-the-cheap fashion mogul. What is Bud Ferrand like? Listen to this life philosophy.
I mean, look at me. Oh, I know I'm not much, but look how things just fall off. Sometimes, baby, sometimes you just gotta ride this crazy world side saddle.
Well, you know how this is going to go, right? Despite Perry and Paul working hard, the new Dunbar fashions end up in Attlee's hands. And Rick, well, that guy commits the ultimate fashion no-no, winding up DOA. The prime suspect, Kitty, and she seems flummoxed.
It's just that they've asked me so many questions, that's all. And I know I've given all the wrong answers.
Or maybe that's just the line readings. I really can't be sure. Perry does some digging, but man, this world is just so confusing to Kitty.
I just don't know, that's all. How they got there, or how long they'd been there, or anything.
Okay, so Rick was selling Attlee fashions on the sly for $25,000. I hope you sell a lot of those $25 suits, Attlee. And when we get to the courtroom, the big dilemma involves where exactly Stasi got his mortal reward. That means Paul has to take the stand, because he apparently saw Stasi leave Dunbar's building.
Now, you stated you arrived just as Mr. Stasi's car drove off.
I stated I heard the watchman say, "Good night, Mr. Stasi."
But you did see his car drive out through the gates.
Yes, I did.
Tell me, had it begun to rain at that time?
It was a light drizzle.
But was it enough to cloud the windows of a car?
Well, I didn't actually look at Mr. Stasi, if that's what you mean. The headlights were too bright anyway.
By the way, Robert Bice shows up as Charlie in this episode. We last saw him in the case of Paul Drake's dilemma, giving Perry and Della the 411 on the apartment desk clerk. This guy has been Faulkner in the case of the fan dancer's horse, in the case of the romantic rogue. He was billed as Hurley in the case of the nervous accomplice. The man's been busy, that's what I'm saying. It appears he's 3 different characters, all of whom work for Drake. Anywho, Perry untangles this bikini woven net by getting to the real criminal, dog-toting Madge Wainwright. Again with the elaborate hat get-up on these women. First, Madge gets catty about Kitty.
What else do you have to know about these things? I mean, looks, touches, the whole electricity of 2 people having a relationship?
No, that's not true.
Then she tries to bust Simon Attlee.
You mean Mr. Attlee was there?
Oh, not with me. He was going to wait in the parking lot for Rick.
Please, Your Honor.
Order.
You see, Rick wanted more money. Everyone knows what Rick was like, and he was threatening to expose Simon. And Simon was going to meet him that night and just straighten things out, that's all. Simon, it doesn't fit if I don't tell the truth. It doesn't fit.
But she's the murderer. Get her to confess, Perry.
Trapped, you said. Inside, you said.
The gates were going to close.
And then didn't you drive Stassi's car off that lot?
Well, he was in no condition to drive. I'd already killed him.
Our conclusion lets us in on Madge's play. She wanted a cut of the ill-gotten gain from Rick Stassi. He wouldn't listen. She killed him in a fit of rage. Meanwhile, Paul's ogling the new Dunbar swimsuit fashions. What do you call a mixture of business and pleasure?
You know, sometimes this business is fun.
We call that plisness or pleasure. Don't ogle your client's main squeeze, Paul. Before we go, let's mention that Trag gets back into the identifying mark business, but with a handkerchief?
I show you this handkerchief, and I ask if you recognize it.
I do. That has my identifying mark on it.
Where did you find it?
Lying on the ground in front of the Stasi home.
What's the material of this handkerchief, Lieutenant?
It's linen. It's Irish linen.
At least it's made from Irish linen. Step it up, Arthur. Leave your mark on a murder weapon or don't leave your mark at all. Now, let's get trivial, shall we? Each episode in our trivia section, I give you 3 takeaways. A Paul is a subject worth investigating more. Adela is something about a particular actor or actress from the episode. And a Perry is something we learn about our intrepid hero, our Paul. Buried in the credits for this episode, Swimsuits by Rose Marie Reed. I'm intrigued. So our Paul prompt, pretty simple. Who is this Rose Marie Reed? Was this a get for the Perry crew? Let's say, was Reed more of a Stasi type, a big-name designer? Or was she a Lisa Ferran type, working anonymously in the background? Also, I hope your research doesn't find that Rosemary got killed. All right, Ardella. Well, you knew it was coming. It could only be Terry Huntington, a.k.a. Kitty Wynn. Roll that glorious line, Reed.
Please, Mr. Mason. Is it going to be too hard to have faith in me?
Well said. Some trivia about Terry. Woo boy, this one got complicated. So, if you look up Terry Huntington, she now has the last name Tidings as a result of her marriage in the 1970s to former U.S. Senator Joseph Tidings. You'll also find that she wrote a memoir in 2013 called California Girl, Miss USA 1959, and a book about Gary Hart in 2015. That's true. From her author's bio on Amazon, you learn that 1, she won Miss California and Miss USA. 2, she worked as an actor in the, quote, motion picture and television industries, end quote. 3, she modeled in New York and Europe. 4, she was a freelance photographer for the U.S. government. 5, she worked for U.S. Senator Alan Cranston, Californian senator. Number 6, she married former U.S. Senator Joseph Tidings and chaired fundraising events in D.C. 7, she served as a scheduler for the 1984 Gary Hart presidential campaign. There's the Hart connection. Number 8, she took a writer's studio course at Stanford University in 2011 that helped her produce her memoir. Number 9, she's writing another memoir but shelved it for a deep dive on how Gary Hart got disgraced. The book is called The Massacre, Covert Assaults on the American Electorate. And number 10, she has 2 daughters, 3 granddaughters, lives in a cottage that overlooks the sea. Okay, all that fairly interesting, but some additional details that my research turned up and things that don't quite add up. Number 1, she wasn't even 20 when she won Miss California and Miss USA, and she finished as second runner-up in Miss Universe. Note, Miss USA, not the same pageant as Miss America. Miss USA doesn't have a talent portion of the competition. Both of those wins for Miss California, Miss USA, while she was a student at UCLA. came in 1959, the same year as this Perry episode. Things were happening for Kitty Wynn. And by my accounting, she was only 19 when she made this episode. Number 2, her other appearances on TV. An episode of You Bet Your Life as herself. An episode of The Untouchables. An episode of Route 66. An episode of some show called The Law and Mr. Jones. And she was in a Three Stooges flick about Hercules in the role of Hecuba. So those were her other roles. Nothing super huge. I'm sure this Perry episode happened to be the biggest thing she was in. Number 3, the big 1960s ordeal for Huntington involved a paternity suit against Hollywood super lawyer Arthur Crowley. That guy is worth a deep dive on his own. Elizabeth Page Huntington was born in 1962, but this is all pre-DNA testing. And Huntington took Crowley to court about the child. He called her a call girl from the stand and said that while he did have a relationship with her, he wasn't the father of her child. There were so many men involved, he wasn't the father. After the suit was dismissed, the jury was split along gender lines, with all the women siding with Huntington from what I could find. Crowley settled with Huntington out of court in the late 60s. I think Huntington got married before she got together with Joseph Tidings. There's a news announcement concerning her engagement to Tidings in the 70s that calls her a divorcee with 2 children. I can't figure out who the first husband was. I don't know about the second child. The first one, the one that was involved in the lawsuit with Crowley, apparently goes by Page now. Alexandra, who the New York Times obit on Tidings said was the child of Tidings and Huntington, Joseph Tidings, former Maryland U.S. Senator. That daughter that they had together became an actress herself and is best known for the role of Aphrodite on Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, and its spinoff, Xena, Warrior Princess. Speaking of Joseph Tidings, that guy's worth the deep dive too. He died in 2020. Only 1 term as senator for the state of Maryland, but it was an eventful term. It coincided with Richard Nixon's presidency. Lots of run-ins with Nixon. His memoir is titled My Life in Progressive Politics. The guy was an advocate for gun control. He was anti-Vietnam War. His first wife, Marjorie Post, was the daughter of the cereal magnate and the richest woman in America at the time. Tidings had 5 marriages, so Huntington was one of 5 wives the dude had. His memoir came out in 2018, Texas A&M Press. He doesn't mention Terry by name, but here's a key passage. Quote, by this time, my marriage to Ginny was falling apart. I had fallen in love with a beautiful California woman whom I would later marry and who would become the mother of my 5th child and 4th daughter, Alexandra. Okay. What the public would have seen is that a married U.S. senator with 4 young children was having an affair. Obviously, such a story would be politically damaging. End quote. That's how he describes how he got together with Huntington. It's a Perry Mason plot. Finally, Terry Huntington is still kicking it in the year of our Lord 2022. 82 years old. She regularly posts photos to her Instagram page. Whew, what a life. Our Perry for this episode involves Perry's knowledge of Judge Learned Hand and his famous quotations. Here we go.
You know, Judge Learned Hand once said, when it comes to fashions and changing styles, others may imitate at their pleasure.
You can't go wrong with a man whose very name is learned. I found one academic say that Hand, an early 20th century New York judge, was the country's 3rd greatest judge behind Oliver Wendell Holmes and John Marshall. Learned Hand handed down a landmark opinion in 1929, which basically said that fashion can't be copyrighted. Perry has slightly changed the quotation from the 1929 opinion authored by Hand. Here's the original quote. In the absence of some recognized right at common law or under the statutes, and the plaintiff claims neither, a man's property is limited to the chattels which embody his invention. Others may imitate these at their pleasure, end quote. You know what? I like Perry's paraphrase a little bit better. It shows Perry knows his law too. Way to hit the books. The theme for this episode? Fashion, of course. The word's etymology is connected to something's appearance, particularly its style, the way it's been made. Surfaces are crucial to this episode, and crafting those surfaces, well, that's what the villains do really well. Stassi's going to make the drawings he made of Kitty look one way to Wally. Madge Wainwright is going to make it look like Rick was driving his car out of the Dunbar warehouse and that the designer was killed at home instead of at the office. That is, fashion is a great place for fakers because the appearance hides the dark reality. But you know what? It's also a good place for people like Kitty and Wally too, where what you see is what you get. Say what you will about Kitty, everything's on the surface with her. As for the truth, it never goes out of fashion, and Perry wears it oh so well. Now, let's hear a Perry proverb. Trust. It's a crucial quality that Perry demands of himself and his clients. Here, Perry lays it on the line with Kitty.
Kitty, Mr. Dunbar wants me to defend you. I can't do that unless you and I have faith in each other.
It's always reciprocal for Perry. Faith isn't a one-way street. He believes in you. Will you believe in him? Kitty does. And soon she's out of those prison grays and into some sweet Dunbar fashions. Now, let's grab a swig from the water cooler.
Now, there is one thing I don't understand.
Go on, Paul.
Each episode in the water cooler, we offer deleted scenes where we imagine some sequences that didn't make the episode's final cut. Number 1, Paul keeps showing up to Dunbar, claiming he's doing research and detecting long after Wally Dunbar has stopped employing Perry. Number 2, Lisa Ferrand adopts Madge Wainwright's dog. Somebody's got to take care of that dog now that Madge is headed to the slammer. Number 3, Dunbar Fashions goes under a year later. Now that Stassi is dead, I mean, the guy was a creep, but he did good work. Number 4, dedicated listener Tim Cree adds his 2 cents. First, we get a montage of Rick Stassi sketching swimsuits made for plastic bags and burlap sacks just to see if Simon Atlee will turn them out in his stores. And then number 5, Tim's second contribution. Bud Ferrand drives around town smashing empty liquor bottles over every payphone or phone booth he can find. Let's talk about our Paul prompt. Last episode, we asked about the quarter noble that Mr. Noble gave to our defendant. Tell us all about that noble, Miss Bunny Lee.
It's round, it's gold, and it's called a quarter noble. There's a picture of the shield of Henry VI on one side, the man with the chicken leg, and there's some flowered scroll work on the other, and there's a tiny little hole bored through it. Right?
My dad wrote in with a response. He found that A, the noble was the first English coin produced in quantity. B, introduced during the second coinage of King Edward III. C, a noble featuring Henry VI was coined during his first reign. D, that he could not find a Henry VI quarter noble, but did find one of Henry V. E, according to the Bullion by Post site, the Henry V quarter noble, thanks to a 1% off sale, my dad notes, see below, stock up and save, could be purchased for 871 British pounds sterling, which is just over $1,000 in 2022 US dollars. And F, in 1959 US dollars, that means the quarter noble would have been just over $100. Thanks for that find, Dad. We also got some fun feedback this week, which is always welcome. Listener Galansky left a hefty comment under the YouTube post of The Case of the Scandalous Scoundrel. It's really great. It's about the made-for-TV movies in general. Scandalous Scoundrel was one of the made-for-TV movies we covered earlier this year. I'll highlight 2 points and let you read the rest. First is this general reflection on the made-for-TV movies. Galansky writes, quote, "After having watched my first pair of the TV movies, what strikes me right away are the bigger budget, change in location, more well-known actors, no recurring characters, and a wider development of suspect arcs given the longer runtime. The lack of regular adversaries, Berger and Trag, is sorely missed as the new prosecutor Reston doesn't have the edge to his character that they did. He seems too ready to concede and add his applause to that of Perry's many admirers. Despite that, I like Reston and think something more could have been made of him." That's fun. I am already envisioning a Reston spinoff show. And then second, Galinsky writes, quote, "Della Street has to be the most memorable secretary in television history. The only one who comes anywhere close for me is Peggy Fair, the girl Friday for Detective Joe Mannix. The actresses in those roles, Barbara Hale, Gail Fisher, both received well-deserved Emmy Awards for their performances." Close quote. Love that too. These are the kinds of feedback I love to receive. So, as always, I'll tell you, I'd love feedback about this episode or the podcast in general. Was there something about this episode you'd like to comment on or correct? You can email me at theperrypod@gmail.com. You can leave comments below the YouTube postings if that's what you choose to do. All PerryPod episodes are available via Spotify, YouTube, and iTunes. You gotta come next time for the episode where the guys decide to eschew alliteration. We decided dastardly dodger and artful absconder wouldn't work. No, all we've got is the case of the artful dodger. Let's hope Lorraine Tuttle can light a fire under the plot. Until then, this is Jonathan Searcy saying, keep on walking that Park Avenue beat.